And so imagine, especially if it's a new hobby, something.
Well, can I challenge that?
Oh, come on, let's go.
Because now I have a new hobby.
Yes.
I'm proud of my work. I want to snap a photo and put it on social media.
And you can make money from that now. It's always a competition.
That is true. That is true. That is actually true. And you know what? You get a high five for that.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be honest, that is true. It can totally lead you back into the cycle. But now think about this.
What is TikTok doing to your brain?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Welcome to LED Live. It's the show where we use the light of Christ to expose the darkness found in media and our culture. Today we have Mia on the show with us. Thank you so much for being here. She's a mental health coach, and she's here to talk with us about TikTok's effect on our brains, which is a very interesting topic. And if you guys have TikTok?
I do.
You do? I don't, but I've heard it's like Instagram on steroids.
Yes.
It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, I promised myself to never make one, so I haven't.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, but before we get into the topic, I have to shout out our patrons. Thank you so much. You're literally the ones who make this show possible, that we are able to continue posting videos every single Friday at noon. So thank you so much. If you want to join our patron family, check out patreon.com/littlelightstudios, or you can donate directly through our website, littlelightstudios.tv. Man, none of us are wearing Lightwear shirts. That's unfortunate. But you can get your own Lightwear t-shirt or stickers at lightwear.shop. All that information is in the description box below. All right, without further ado, let's talk about TikTok. Yeah.
Wow, I'm so glad that we are talking about this. As a mental health coach and consultant, sometimes it really hurts me when I see that people are not aware, and it's really big to be aware, because once you are aware of something, you can actually decide. Mm-hmm. And when you can decide something, you can attract the right things, the things that you want. And so a lot of people are interested in attracting, right? And so who wouldn't want to attract health and wellness and beauty? And so what do? We get on TikTok, right? We get on there and we're like, you know what? I need a fabulous body. Let me look and see who has one. Scrolling. And what happens in the end, right? After scrolling and looking, do you remember feeling kind of down, low, like it's impossible? Well, it's all a part of the system, and it's interesting because I, as a content creator, I was thinking, let's get on TikTok, Mia, how am I going to be able to get out there and reach a lot of people? And some people think that's the case, but actually people have very few followers, even though it seems like, oh, there's so many people following me. And I just want to say, the way that TikTok is made, it is literally made to grab you and keep you. So have you ever been stuck in a conversation, right? You've got to go somewhere. You really need to get some stuff done, and you can't seem to get out of it. You're like, okay, how can I tap out? Well, TikTok's literally like that. It's really hard to tap out, and it's actually made on purpose. I was looking at some articles that were produced by Mayo Clinic, and it was literally saying from the moment you come on the screen for TikTok, you are instantly rewarded. So there's parts of your brain that receive reward, right? Like your nucleus accumbens. And when you get on there, you're being rewarded by, bam, an image right then and there, those videos or whatever. And so it just kind of sucks you in and grabs you in and keeps you there. And what I didn't know, which I'm so glad to be able to share with you, is that not only is it grabbing you in, but even the constant motion of you sliding and scrolling, right? You can, I heard one of the people in their article say it's synonymous with a person that is going to gamble and they're now at the slot machine. You remember slot machines? Yeah. Maybe you know about them, maybe you don't. So imagine, a slot machine, right? You got the pictures and it's scrolling, you're scrolling. And it's actually giving you a reward, one, to scroll, but then two, when you hit a good video, this is like, I got a good one. And actually the bad videos are embedded in there so that you get that sense of suspense. Like, what's going to happen next? Is it going to be a good video or is it going to be a bad video? What's going to happen? And all of this is giving your brain that dopamine rush, or it's giving you that sense of like, oh, wow, I have to keep going. I have to stay in this. And
And you know what I noticed, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I think what's fascinating is that when I jump in it, whether it be Reels, whether it be TikTok, or whether it be whatever the other one, the term is they use, Shorts, I think is the YouTube's version, right? They give you the best one at the beginning, and you're like, wow, and so now you're hooked, you're gonna find the next one. And I've noticed, as you go along, all of a sudden there's a video is like, I was expecting something to explode. I was expecting some baby to fall and then be caught or something.
Right.
What happened? Oh, and then I look at the comments and it's like 0 comments, 0 proof. They've snuck that one in there as that suspense.
Exactly. And that is what makes it so malicious, actually, because this is calculated to do that for you. You know, so that you'll have that response that, okay, what's gonna happen next? Kind of like watching a movie, you know, that built-in sense of, okay, what's gonna happen next? I have to keep watching so I can see, you know, what's gonna happen. And so you've got, I like to think of it as like, oh, the good cash and bad cash. Like the good video is, I've gotten the money, and the bad video is, oh no, I lost it. But it's just enough for you to be like, well, I won't do that again. I'll be able to beat the system, as it were. And so what's also happening when you do that is that sense of repetition, right? It's
creating a habit.
Exactly.
Is this all subconscious, or is this, because for me, when I'm scrolling, I mean, I guess I could say Instagram because I don't have TikTok, but I know that TikTok integrates into Instagram, but I just scroll, you know, so is this all subconscious that my brain is just capturing all these little notions? And
Absolutely. It's definitely subconscious. You know, like no one's going to sit there and be like, ooh, I'm suspended, so let me keep going. You know, it's just, it's actually built on how your brain works, so that as you continue to do it, you'll continue to get those little dings, pings, rings, all of that. So just like gambling is habit forming, TikTok, in a sense, you're gambling. Right, you're gambling with, okay, am I gonna get a good video or a bad video?
What constitutes a bad video?
Like a bad video would be something like that's not really that interesting, right? It may look
just
low
one
production, like bad video that would make a person be like, oh, that's not that interesting, it's boring. Whereas a good video is like, wow, that was spectacular. Oh my goodness, did you see that? Or like you say, was the baby about to fall? Oh, they caught it. Oh, that was a good video. And then a bad video, like, oh my, this is so boring. Like, what are they talking about? Like, okay, switch. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought TikTok had like one of the best algorithms, and the point was to only give you quote unquote good videos.
No, they purposefully embed bad videos to give you that oh, this was good, this wasn't good, this is good, that wasn't good. That's literally on purpose.
Okay.
So, you know, we're talking about the slot machine and how a slot machine is so addictive, right? You know, just even think about a slot machine, the sounds, right? Tick, 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 tick. And, you know, this movement that's happening, all of this is that brain-body connection that's going on, right? And it's the same even with TikTok. And even, we're talking about TikTok, but even other social media platforms, you're getting a ding, you're getting a ring, you're getting a like. All of these are contributing to you actually being connected to this platform. And it's repetition also. And, you know, I don't know about you, but my mom always said repetition deepens the impression, you know, and that's literally true when we think about brain pathways. You know, that pathway in your brain is constantly being strengthened when you're going through these different habits. And definitely it's habit forming for you to continue using platforms like TikTok.
Wow. Okay. So, but this is a natural thing that's happening in our body. It's God-given that these corporations are trying to take advantage of, really. I'm assuming this is more than just one big social experiment. Like this is of benefit to these companies. And the first thing that comes to mind is obviously a financial benefit. You know, the longer you stay on their platform, the more hours they can market to, you know, other companies, and they can put their ads on there and so forth and so on. But like, can we get into, because just because something is natural, so to speak, if it is, I guess, used in an intemperate way, it can be detrimental. So how can that be detrimental to someone?
Right, and so I'm glad you asked that, because, you know, when you think about it, some of the people that are suffering from the use of TikTok the most are actually youth and young adults. Because as you're continuing to be inundated with all of these images, we're seeing in the research that many young people are having body image issues. right? There's also this false sense of reality that, because, in your normal life, you might see someone run down the street and they're fit, right? But on TikTok, you can get 1,000, and so it actually makes you think that there's so many people that actually look like this or act like this or do this. It's giving you like that false sense of reality. So we're finding a greater number of youth and young adults suffering from depression and anxiety just because of their consumption, right?
Yeah, and I've noticed that it even categorizes it. It's like if you're interested in fitness, it'll show you a lot of fitness.
Right.
It's not showing me a lot of fitness. That probably says something about what I should probably exercise more. But it shows me a lot of, how to do things and construction. I do a lot of renovations and stuff. And so I'm seeing all this stuff. I'm seeing all the funny stuff too.
Yeah.
And so all these categories are fitting in here, and it gives you what you want.
Exactly.
And then throws in something every now and then that's just kind of off the wall.
But why? You could respond. That's fine.
Yeah, and you're right. The off the wall is actually calculated, and that's what's so inhumane is that they're going to calculate things in there that you don't want, and you think it's random, but it's really not. It's on purpose to create that slot machine thing again, right? When you get the slot machine, cherry, apple, cherry, apple, cherry, yes! Let me do it again, cherry, you see what I'm saying? So that's what's happening.
I would, to put it kind of like real world, if someone grows up in a family where all the family is really athletic, it's more likely that they themselves are going to be involved in athletics. Yes. So why is it that seeing like the example of someone running or a lot of people running, why would someone go then have a higher possibility of falling into depression versus going out for a run?
Right. Ooh, that's a really good question. And so there are people who in a family see their family members be athletic and they become athletic. But there's also people in that same athletic family who's like, why come I'm not like everybody else? Right? There's that sense of pressure to become athletic when you don't have that intrinsically in you to be it. And so that's kind of the issue. Does that make sense?
It does.
So like in the sense that imagine we are that child who's now been embedded into, by being in TikTok, we have been embedded into that athletic family, but we're the person who is not, it's not realistic to think that just because I see all of these people being athletic,
that I can do it too.
That I can do it too, that I need to do it, that this is my destiny. Just like the child who's in the family with all these athletes that has that depression or anxiety or angst about, wow, why am I not like this? I'm not like everybody else in my family. I'm different. I am disconnected from the group. And God made all of us to want connection, And so now TikTok is giving me it's happening in two ways. It's giving me a false sense of connection in the sense that it's like that family, right? We're a family of people who are athletic and doing these amazing things. I should be able to do this because I'm connected to this family of people that do this, And yet, I also, as a youth or young adult, may not have the mental maturity to see all the different dynamics and aspects of it. You know what I mean? So now then there's the other way to connect is like, okay, because God has created us all to want connection, they're capitalizing on that. I'm giving you a false connection of making you think that this is reality. And then on the same end, I'm now, because I'm not able to achieve it, being isolated. And isolation is a break in connection, a break from what we've been created to have and to do, because I feel like this is unattainable, but it never really was. This is just like that super athletic family. Every athletic family is not athletic, like every family is not athletic. There are some people who have been gifted, crafted, and they have these abilities. And they're exceptional. It's like an exception versus the main goal, main reality, if that makes sense. But now, I think because I'm seeing TikTok and there's so many of these images, I believe that the exception is the rule. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How important is it for someone to, like, I guess for a frontal lobe to be fully developed when being on social media?
Wow,
or is that
powerful.
even important?
There's a lot of conversation about, your frontal lobe and what is actually maturity, and we know that science has already taught us that very young children really shouldn't be engaging in media, period, right? And I know that that's something that a lot of people don't want to hear because they just don't have, for lack of a better way to put it, what it takes to really process and digest that, right? And so even though now science is trying to say, and I believe it is a financial thing, well, this is only really affecting the younger population. We're seeing so many articles coming out, in the medical journals that are saying this isn't just the young, youth, and adult people that are immature, but people, period, are being affected by this false reality, this false family exposure. Yeah.
If you could choose at what age a person could get on social media, or what would be appropriate, what age would that be?
Wow, that's a really hard one. I don't know, somebody's gonna get me for this. So the question you're asking me, if I'm understanding correctly, based on how your brain is wired and how it's made, is there an age that your brain is safe to ingest social media?
Yeah.
And so that's very controversial, right? Because no matter what age you are, the way social media is actually crafted, it's not really made to support your brain health. Does that make sense?
Any age.
Yeah. And so really the answer would be, I can't recommend an age that would be safe when we know that this mechanism is being created to capitalize on how you're made. Does that make sense?
That answers. I had another question too, like, can social media and good mental health coexist?
Right.
Actually.
Really?
Right.
Really?
Absolutely, because the thing is, there are things that you can get from social media that support your mental health, right? So think about times where you do watch something that is inspirational. The issue is actually, so social media and the engagement of social media is symptomatic, I believe. You know what I'm saying? Like, why am I engaging this material? In what frame of mind am I engaging this material is what I believe really sets the stage. So if I'm getting on social media because I want to numb, right? I want to disassociate. I want to come out of my reality. Well, I'm going to be more likely, going back to the analogy of the family, to experience negative effects from it. But if I'm engaging in it for a more intellectual purpose. For instance, you can watch a sermon on social media, right? You can watch this show on social media, right? Then this is going to help me. It's going to feed my brain, right? But at what level am I engaging the information? So that's a principle I think I would look at when I'm thinking about, is this healthy? Is this not healthy?
Right. Because I think one thing for me that's so overwhelming is just how much information can come to you within the span of an hour. Yeah. So it's like, sure, I could be watching one video, but then like my brain is still seeing all the suggestions on the side. And then on Instagram, you have like all these, 3 to 15 second reels that are just, when you look at those hours and hours and hours, it gets so overwhelming for me. And so even if I do have all this positive information that I could collect, it just ends up overwhelming me.
And so that's powerful that you're bringing that out, because researchers have actually looked at TikTok and saw that they don't have a hard stop. There's not a hard stop when you're doing social media. Usually, if you're going to watch something like YouTube, you have to opt in, right? These opt into it. Whereas with TikTok specifically, you're just in. From the moment you engage that app, you're just in it. And there's no hard stop put in TikTok so that you can be able to opt out, really. And so now people find that, wow, I didn't mean to be on here all this time, but I have, because because based on how they've studied our brains and see how that works, that there's no hard stop put in there to help you disengage from the material if you want to.
I've noticed that my hard stop, if I'm scrolling on TikTok and I have nothing else to do, I'm scrolling, and all of a sudden I'm like, I don't want to see that guy trip over that thing anymore, scroll past it. Oh, I don't want to see that happen anymore. And after about 5 videos of me disconnecting, I'm like, I don't have to do this. What? If I'm getting such a negative reaction from this thing right here, why do I have to keep scrolling? And that's when I turn it off. That's when it disconnects. But you're right. There is no stop button. There's no hey, this video is finished now, like on YouTube.
Yep, and that's important because you brought that up as well, Kendi, the idea that this is on purpose. You know, the longer you're on here, the more this company, this association, whatever, is going to benefit from you being on there. And it's not about your brain health and wellness. It's about how much money can I make from you continuing in this.
Yeah. I think it takes intentionality and also taking like some responsibility as well when it comes to, because we all know what's going on. When you open the app, you know how TikTok works, how any social media platform works. There are actually apps you can download, or I think it might be in the settings of iPhones where you can actually put a timer and the app shuts down after a certain amount of time that you've set. So just doing little things like that can help us as to combat how the apps are designed.
Man, that's really powerful. I'm glad that you brought that in because it really makes me think about, you know, some people are like, well, man, you know, how can I stop this? How do I break free? You know, like I enjoy this. I feel like in my life, there's nothing enjoyable. You know what I'm saying? We're just talking about that psychological aspect of it. You know, if you take this away from me, what will I have? You know, and so sometimes in shows like this, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear the truth. You know, I don't want to know. But I love how you brought that up. Like there are things that we can do to kind of guard our minds and to kind of help us to be able to break free. And you talked about it, like being able to shut down the app, being able to take off notifications, right? That you're not being notified every time something's being downloaded. One of my favorite mentors said, the best information is that which you actually seek after, not that which just comes to you, if that makes sense. And so I really love that idea. And I just want to say to those who are, you know, battling, this is not just about TikTok, you know, it's not just about social media. I love to think about getting to the root of matters. Does that make sense? Like what's in my soil when I'm thinking about my own depression and anxiety, my own feelings of disconnection, what's actually causing it? You know what I'm saying? And so it's important to see why am I connecting to this material and what's a better connection that's actually gonna feed the root of why I might just be losing myself on TikTok. Another thing I wanted to say when we talk about how to break free from it is actually the idea of removing the trigger, you know, and there's many ways that this can happen. I mean, some people actually decide, you know what, I'm gonna not have the app. Some people decide, you know what, that's not even good enough. I'm gonna like actually downgrade my phone, you know, and I'm gonna actually not use a smartphone because I know myself, I have addictive tendencies, you know, I have tendencies towards, you know, going overboard. And so I'm going to do that, you know, and somebody might think that it's extreme, but I think what's even more extreme is not actually living your life and missing out on responsibilities. You know, you can't pay your bills or you fail a test, you know, because this thing is consuming you.
Okay. For some people, this might sound extreme, especially for the broader population who don't let it let social media get out of hand to the point of like they're not showing up for work or they're failing in school. Some might actually argue that there is a connection between social media and their social life. Like without social media, they don't have a social life. Is that a myth or is that an actual reality that this is kind of needed for people to be sociable?
Right. So with me, as a coach, I like to ask questions to questions sometimes when things like that, because I really believe each person has to figure out for themselves. Like the scripture says, you know, be persuaded in your own heart, right? And so my question to a person that says, well, I don't let it get out of hand, I want to ask the question, well, are you sure? Because a lot of times we're thinking that something's not a problem, but we don't realize that it actually is, you know? So it's like, ask your friends, you know, how present are you really? So people will say, oh, I'm using social media because this is my socialization. And yet here we are all together, but you're here. You know what I'm saying? And you see it when you go to the restaurant where there's a whole family sitting together and everyone's on their phone. So where's the, did you go to the restaurant to be on your phone? Or did you go to the restaurant to eat with your family? You know, so those are the questions that I would put forth to that question. You know, is it healthy? You know, it's not that bad, you know? I remember when I was addicted to food, right? And I didn't think it was that bad because, hey, I'm not shooting anybody. I didn't steal the food.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And yet I couldn't stop. You know what I'm saying? I would want to stop. I would say to myself, I've had enough, and yet I had to keep going. And that's like, there were roots there. There were reasons. And I noticed also that depending on how my day had went, depending on who I interacted with, that this issue came up for me. So like some people, they don't think exactly they're triggered. Some people think, oh, you know, social media isn't an issue for me. But now when I'm triggered and all of a sudden I've spent the rest of my day. And
on
so
social media.
Yeah.
You know, something my wife and I practice is, we've been doing this a few times, not all the time, but when we go into church, we usually leave our phones in the car. And it's been a blessing because we don't, I mean, now everyone's going to go look for my phone in my car. Right. Hey, don't steal my phone.
Right.
What kind of car do you drive?
Yeah, right. But we do that also sometimes, not all the time, but when we go out to eat together.
Yes.
We leave our phones away. That way we can't just like, because we don't even think about it.
Right.
You pull out your phone, you go, let me check that, I just got a ding. And now you spent the last 10 minutes while your partner's over there sitting there by themselves. And we both said to us, hey, you want to join me over here? So
absolutely. I mean, and it's definitely happened to me as well. Even though I study this, I talk about this, I train this, I too have to catch myself, you know. Sometimes I'm, as a media content creator, you know, I'm there to leave some content that is of use. And then next thing I know, my sisters are like, I mean, not my sisters, but my daughters are like, hey, mommy, were you still going to play with this? I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. Look, here we go. I'm coming. I'll be there in a minute. And a minute's like what, 20? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so one thing that has been really helpful for me is that because I know that I will be using content to be a blessing, is actually putting that timer on. I think you talked about that, you know, and saying, okay, the timer is off. This is my opportunity to give me that hard stop that may not be there on Facebook or on TikTok. You know, it's that hard stop to kind of wake up my brain and say, hey, something else is supposed to be happening right now. Yeah. And, you know, you can obviously ignore your alarm, but at least something was put in place.
Yeah, it disrupted your mind.
Yeah.
You know, finding the root is important, but identifying it doesn't necessarily take away the draw.
That's right.
Right?
That's true.
And we did make mention of like there's apps to cut off the time and all of that, but someone could just go back into it, and it just brings up the principle that once you've created a deficit, you have to fill it with something. So do you have any tips on what someone can do? And I hope it's just not like go for a walk, because you know how you can't necessarily walk for 5 hours when you were like scrolling for 5 hours. So what practical steps can someone take to transition off of their screens to life?
So somebody's actually not gonna like my answer when I do say go for a walk, but I'm actually going to say go for a walk, and here's why. So let's give a few more things though. Why go for a walk, or why? So the first thing I want to say in answering that question is, honestly, truly, like, the roots really matter. You know, why am I doing a particular behavior? Because you find that when you're able to settle some of the issues in your life, or settle some of the things that are causing you anxiety, you just will intrinsically, automatically make different choices, you know? And so, you know, being a mental health coach, you know, just a little plug, I love when people come and we're able to settle some of those matters that have been unsettled for them, so that now they just automatically stop overeating. You know what I'm saying? It's not even a matter of, okay, I've got to do these 12 steps sometimes. You know, it's like, man, this got settled for me in my mind, this issue of why this happened or that happened. And now I find that some of the behaviors that I just couldn't stop doing, I don't do anymore. And so that's one, getting to the root, right? Being able to settle issues in your life, knowing how to do it. And I do have a wonderful tool for us to talk about that will help in some cases. Okay. And so then another thing is actually hobbies. I mean, I know that people are like, hobbies, rolls eyes, right? Like, here we go. But hobbies actually help to create a new pattern. Like even learning a new hobby where you're able to engage your brain from a different on a different level, you know? And so imagine, especially if it's a new hobby, you know, something.
Well, can I challenge that?
Oh, come on, let's go.
Because now I have a new hobby.
Yes.
I'm proud of my work. I want to snap a photo and put it on social media.
And you can make money from that now. It's always a competition.
That is true. That is true. That is actually true. And you know what? You get a high five for that.
Okay.
Because I'm going to be honest, that is true. It can totally lead you back into the cycle. But now think about this, you know, you are still strengthening your brain by creating that new hobby. Because if you don't do the hobby, you talked about it, right? Like filling the empty vessel. All I have is TikTok. Well, if I can create a platter or a plate of different things that I can actually do so that TikTok isn't my only outlet. Because it's one thing to like, hey, I just, you know, did my hair. Look at this cool style. I'm going to put it on TikTok. Boom. But I know I have other outlets versus I have no other outlet. I don't know what to do when I'm bored. I don't know what to do when I'm triggered. I didn't even realize that I'm triggered, and that's why I'm engaging in this behavior. It's coming to TikTok or some of these social media platforms now from a different place. You know, so what do you think about that? Like,
no, I agree.
Yeah. I think like for me personally, because I had always struggled with social media, and I had to come to a point, like what I was doing before was whenever, like before I go to bed at night, I would turn my phone on airplane mode. Because for me, just deleting the app, my brain is still like, did I get notifications? Like it sat in the back of my mind. And at some point it was just torture. You know, so then I started deactivating my account, but then like once I felt sad or something, I would reactivate it again. And so then what I started doing was putting my phone on airplane mode so that in the morning when I wake up and I check, there are no notifications. My alarm still works, but there are no notifications. So then it's like, it doesn't, like my first few thoughts aren't just this huge rush of information. And I've noticed that during those times, especially when I replace that with spending time with God, I'm less anxious. I have more focus. I can eat breakfast. I'm not rushing, you know, and I'm just in a better place compared to when I just start my day with social media. So,
see, and what I hear you saying is that you're even practicing presence. Like being present, like you are in your life, you know, you're not just eating while you're looking, you know, at something, but you're taking the time to be mindful. And, you know, sometimes the word mindful can sound like a dirty word depending on who you talk to, but it doesn't have to be, you know, but in being mindful about what's going on in your life. Did you know it's really insidious of some of these platforms? They are embedding things that are going to trigger you and make you feel like you need to actually be on there because they know what that we've been mass traumatized by different things, you know? In fact, some of the trauma's been created. And so even though you may think that you're in a safe environment, safe place on TikTok or some of these other places, you will find that every now and then, and go with me on this, you'll remember, oh, this child was abducted. Oh, this horrible sad thing. You're like, wait, where did this come from? Like, why is this in my feed? But it just came in there, you know? And so, scarcity. There's, you know, food shortage and, you know, different things like that. It has nothing to do with what you've been looking at. And I dare you I don't dare you. Scratch that. Look out for it. You know, look out for it. You know, should you find yourself on social media, watch how it just kind of pops in there. The bad or boring videos, and also triggering things that can cause responses, emotional responses in you.
Can we go back just for a second? Go back to presence and mindfulness, because those are two key trigger words in the New Age movement. So I want to understand what you mean by that.
That's good. That's good. Thank you for that. Okay, so I love that you asked that, because you're right. Those are words that make people kind of like, what are we saying? You know, like, so
should I do yoga?
Right. So when I'm talking about mindfulness, the concept actually came from the Bible. You know, Jesus said, take no thought for tomorrow will take thought for itself. Sufficient to the day is the evil thereof. And embedded in that scripture is the principle of being present. Right? The principle of like not jumping to the future to try to figure out what's going to happen, because a lot of times people who suffer with anxiety, that's where their thoughts are, right? Like, what's going to happen if I fall? What's going to happen on this video if I don't do the right thing? I was having that same, situation. You know what I mean? So we're in the future, which is causing us anxiety, or either we're in the past where there's nothing we can do about what's already happened. instead of being in the present where we are mindful, I'm mindful of the fact that I'm here with you all and that we're having a conversation, and I'm not allowing my brain to jump to another time that's not right now, where I can start to have anxiety. You know, that's really the true basis of mindfulness, when it's not being, you know, perverted by what some people may try to make it mean, but it's really just this idea of being right here in the moment and being connected to what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. I want to make sure that you got through your list, because we kind of derailed. You started off saying, yeah, go for a walk,
right?
Or
hobbies.
Pick up a hobby. Right. Was there anything else that you could suggest?
Well, I really wanted to talk about why, you know? So when we think about, like, okay, we talked about going for a walk, and somebody be like, oh, not going for a walk, right? But the beautiful thing about going for a walk is how it's going to engage your senses. You know, God has made so many beautiful things in nature that actually ground us, which grounding is another word that people use in New Age to be like, oh, that's, you know, to make it something that it isn't. You know, when we think about grounding, our bodies have been fearfully and wonderfully made, you know? And so they are made to cause us to go into fight or flight because we need to, or to calm us down. But sometimes because we have lost the art of being present and being in tune with our bodies, actually being able to get out into nature and smell the fresh air, feel the sunshine on our face, create those beautiful memories for our amygdala to tag and say, hey, that was good, that was wonderful, right? And then create a pleasurable experience from something that is natural, right? Instead of something that is unnatural. And so also grounding, there are two different types of grounding. And when we're looking at this, we're looking at sensory grounding, right? And when we talk about sensory, we're talking about our touch, right? And so what we feel, like we talked about, we're out in nature and we're taking that walk, right? So we feel the breeze, you know, we see the mountains, sensory, see the mountains, and it's really calming and peaceful. It reminds us that, you know, wow, the mountains are higher than me, something else is higher than me. Sensory grounding, that's so powerful. But now we can also talk about cognitive grounding, which that is also a biblical principle that has been unfortunately maligned, right? Because Jesus would tell, I mean, not Jesus, but in the Old Testament, God talked about, you know, keep my word ever before you. It's on the tablets of your heart, you know, keep it in your mind. Post it places where you can see it, right? Because it was supposed to remind God's people of who and how he was. And so when we talk about cognitive grounding, we can use our frontal lobe, our minds, to remind us of who and how God is and who we are in him by using things as simple as scripture, you know, or, you know, even affirmations has become a bad word in some Christian circles, but affirmation is really just us reminding ourselves who we belong to, that we're God's children. You know, God, you told me that you know the end from the beginning. You said that you would I'm precious in your sight, you know, that you would perfect that which concerns me. All of those things can really help us to ground cognitively, you know. And so these are things that we can actually do to break free. And the reason it's breaking us free is because it's helping us to deal with some of those internal issues that subconsciously we might not even be aware of. But in getting out in nature and doing those hobbies, we're healing the roots.
Yeah.
So what I hear you saying is we should be doing what we were created to be doing.
Oh, that's good.
Instead of necessarily what man has created around us. I even see this when we're in the, I've often thought when we're in the middle of the city, at night you look up and you can't see stars. You can't see that thing that's above you, or that's and you can't say, wow, who else is out there, and who made all these things. But when you get out of the city, you're out of man's creation, and that's the parallel I'm going for. You actually see all this stuff, and you say, man, I not only can feel the breeze, I can see the trees, I can see the grass, I can see the stars. There's something bigger than me. There's something amazing going on here.
Yes. And I love how God has made it. Like, we can actually discipline our minds that no matter where we are, we can break free. Even if we're in prison, you know, I think about Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps. You know, he could not, you know, all around him was death and sadness and destruction and degradation, you know, but our minds were so fearfully and wonderfully made that in his mind, he could imagine something different. And sometimes people think of imagination even as being like, oh, what do you mean your imagination? But God gave us the ability to imagine heaven, imagine what it will be like to live in a world where there is no sin, to be in a place where things can be better. It actually physiologically does something to you. It literally creates patterns in your brain of something better, right? It gives you that dopamine boost. Hope. Exactly. And so these are all tools God has given us, and man is aware of it. And so unfortunately, sinful men that are bent on sin use those different capabilities that we have, and they thwart them. And then Satan will even come along and try to take them from us and even make us feel that, using your imagination, being able to ground yourself, that these are bad, so don't use these tools. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I'm reminded of a story that I heard growing up. There was a person in a hospital room, and then he was there for a while. I don't know what disease he had, but then he got a roommate, as hospital rooms sometimes do have two people in a room. Right. But this person, whatever they were in the hospital for, made them very depressed.
Right.
And so they would stay in their bed with their head under the sheets, and they would just turn away from the other patient. So the patient who was there first started telling his roommate, I suppose, what he was seeing outside of the window.
Right.
Look, today there's a marching band, or, telling stories about, look, there's a little child doing this with their parent or what have you, and describing the scenes of the park and all this type of stuff. And slowly but surely, he saw the mood of the roommate starting to change until one day he turned over finally and looked out the window. You know what was there? A brick wall. But it completely changed his roommate, because it's like there's something more out there. There's something to live for. Yeah. And while that thought came to mind, a question came with it, because I'm thinking of those people who are like gearing up to break free from this social media addiction, or maybe someone who maybe needs to be a little bit more sympathetic to someone who's dealing with social media addiction. Is it okay to make a comparison between social media addiction and, let's say, alcoholic addiction, to where there is withdrawal and there is a process to get healthy, so to speak? Is that the case within social media, and how can someone work through that and maybe prepare for that?
Wow, that's really good. Thank you for asking that. So there are two ways that we can look at it, right? When we think about social media addiction, someone might argue that it's actually not addiction. They will say this is actually behavior. These are behavioral issues. And so they will want to treat it differently. Okay, so if this is a behavior issue, how can I change behaviors, which is kind of what we've been talking about in a sense. How can I change my behaviors so that I can get a different outcome? Whereas when we're talking about addiction, sometimes we actually need to go a different route. And I am in no way an addiction specialist, so I just want to outline that. But just in the work that I have seen in addiction and the work that I've had to do for myself in addiction, sometimes you can't just go cold turkey on something. Absolutely not with an addiction. In fact, some people say, you will hear testimonies where people say, I just stopped drinking and I was fine. But a lot of times, and people have had that situation, but a lot of times, you can actually become sicker. It could actually become a life and death situation for you to just cold turkey and addiction. And so there are some people who say that social media is an addiction, and some people say it's a behavioral issue. And so that's a really tricky one in terms of answering your question. But I think that as Christians and as people, empathy, we should always, should is actually something we're not supposed to say, but anyway, empathy is something that helps anyone. Right? Empathy is something that we want to think about when we're working with our loved one, or we know someone who is struggling. How about we put it that way? We're not here to diagnose. We can't say whether this is an addiction or this is a behavior per se, or their comorbidity where they're both happening at the same time, right? The idea that two things are happening at the same time when it comes to this sickness or issue, we can't say that. But what we can do is that we can be a source of encouragement. We can be a source of understanding. we can be a resource that points them to other resources that may be able to help them wherever they're at, whether it's behavior or addiction or both. Does that make sense?
It does.
And that's really important for people to know, because if I keep trying to, I remember when I was battling with the food addiction, I kept trying to stop. And you know what happened? By the end of the day, I'm like, I couldn't eat enough food. My stomach was ready to pop. I'm like throwing up and I'm just gorging it. You get what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to do it and not realizing that I had an addiction, I had a problem. And there was a root that needed to be addressed before, before I could stop engaging in that behavior, right? And so that's the best way I could answer that. Have empathy with the person, suggest to them what you're seeing. What are you seeing? I've noticed, Mia, that you are not present. It looks like you're not really, getting into the things that you used to get into, the things that you love. How are you doing? What's going on? And not like what's going on, but
what's wrong with you?
This is what I'm noticing. I'm noticing this, and this, and I'm concerned about it. Do you mind to talk to me about what I'm seeing? What do you think is going on? And the person, depending on how old they are, they may shut you down. They may not want to respond. But at least you open the door, which is the most important thing. Like, I've opened the door, I've made you aware that I see something, and always being willing to revisit it.
Yeah.
I guess, good.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that Kendi told me, because I don't know, maybe I'm a special case, I don't know, but if I let something go that's addicting, I just, either what was underlying has always been there, but I just pick up something else. Right. So it's like, okay, I can get on social media, but then I'm going to turn to food, and it's like, oh, you're going to take my food away? Okay, I'm going to go shopping. And it's just like this nonstop thing. Yeah. And so I had this thing for a while, which I still kind of do with hot Cheetos.
Oh boy.
And
anyway, this is a loving space. So.
That's right. And I remember when, because she would always encourage me not to, and then I still would. Yeah. And she's like, man, because every time I would say, like, I'm craving some hot Cheetos, she's like, what you're looking for is comfort. And I'm like, wow,
I always get nervous when she tells stories like this, because I don't remember what I say.
Yeah, but it's just like, I don't know, just those things that you don't, because that's what it is. Yeah. It's like something with me I feel like something's missing, and so I'm taking something to replace that. And it's not necessarily fulfilling. It's not what I need. It's what I think I need, or what okay, like, let's go here. So like when I was little, I never got, I didn't grow up in a emotionally secure place. Right. There was not really emotion shown in the home. How love was expressed was stuff. Right. It's like, oh, you're crying, here's a new toy, here's what, it was always just, I've never had to worry about anything in terms of like material possessions. And so growing up, it's like, oh, I'm feeling sad today, I would just go shopping, or I would just go buy myself something. And so that's just something that,
so it's a cultivated tendency.
Exactly. So when she said that you're looking for comfort, no one had ever said that to me. I never knew why I did those things, but it's like calling it out is like, something's missing and you're distracting yourself.
And I feel like Kendi, just on camera, off camera, I think you have like a gift, and I think you should explore that, pray about it, because, it just seems like you have a gift for being in that mental health coaching space, whether it's coaching or, you'll look into it, you'll pray about it. But I just feel like I sense that from you. Not sense like, weird. Like, some people are really weird about those kinds of things. That's not how I mean it.
You see dead people?
I know. Thank you.
She's feeling your energy. And
not the energy. It just, I'm observing. Let me use vocabulary. I'm observing in the way that you talk, in the way that you think, the way that you ask questions. That's really helpful in this space, and that you come off very thoughtful and non-judgmental. And so that's what I mean.
Thank you.
Not that, you emit or something, nothing weird or anything like that. But, that's really interesting that you said that, because as you were speaking about it, I know that whenever I was sad as a kid, people gave me food. You know what I'm saying? And I had to catch myself, because we're talking about patterns, right? And jumping into social media can be that pattern. Like, child, I'm busy, here's a phone, here's a computer, right? Here goes the pattern because I'm busy parent and I need to do this, so here you go. So now child grows up, oh, I missed the connection, which is a huge word if no one takes anything else from the video. Connection. That is a root often, that there's a missing connection for us from something that we need, you know, and sometimes Christians will be like, yeah, you need to be connected to God, you know, but God didn't just make us to be by ourselves. You know, he made us in a community. He didn't leave Adam by himself with the animals. He gave him Eve and then a family, you know, and so we are created to be connected. But they would give me food, you know, and food would then, it became that pattern that made me feel better. When I'm sad, when I'm angry, there goes food. It's always been my friend and my enemy, you know, in a sense. And so that can be happening for people with social media as well.
There was a point that came to mind when you were sharing the experience of you withholding the food from yourself, and then at the end of the day you just
absolutely.
What came to mind was self-talk.
Yes.
Like sometimes we're thinking, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do that, instead of looking at the positive. Let me go out and do this and do that. And I bring this up about the 10 Commandments all the time. You know, the translation to English isn't always that great. So it's like, thou shalt not all the time. It's like, no, I don't engage in this because of my love for God and all these things like that. So kind of having a mental shift, I think will help in the process of not feeling so deprived.
I love that you said that. You hit it right on the head. And while you're saying that, it makes me think about how we see God. You know, a lot of times in the work that I do, that's the root that I'm talking about. How we see God and how we see ourselves will shape a lot of our behaviors, whether the behaviors turn into addictions or whatever the case may be. Because if I have a toxic view, you know, a toxic self-talk or toxic image of God, even though there was a study that was done by Baylor University, and it's pretty old now, but it talked about that America believed in 4 gods, you know, that they had the authoritarian God, and then there was the distant God, the critical God, and then also I think there were people that were atheists, and then there was a benevolent God, you know, and it was interesting because everybody on some level would say, oh, God is good. You know how people say, God is good, that's his nature.
Cliche.
And yet their behaviors or the way they responded to people or responded to themselves showed that they actually believed in a critical God. Why? Because they were critical. They couldn't, and nothing was ever good enough. You know, you got a A, you should get an A+. You know, why didn't you do it like this? And so, who wants to be in a relationship with someone who's ultra critical? Nothing's ever good enough. If I see God that way, but He's also good, now I don't do that well on a test, or I feel like I got a mark at work. Here comes those Cheetos or the cake, Mia, you know, you name it, you know, I'm going to do something I don't realize I was triggered, if that makes sense.
And I think family plays a role into that too. So when we're used to, because I grew up in a critical household as well. So if that's what you're used to, then you automatically assume God is like that. Like I punished myself a lot. The whole concept of grace and God not wanting to punish me. Of course, there are consequences for sin, but that was something that I'm still learning till this day, because it's just not it doesn't feel natural to me. Like for me, it's like you did something wrong, you're gonna sit in shame for like the next 6 days, and you know, and that's just how it was. And even the whole concept of coming to God when you sin. You know, like I would always isolate. I'm like, He doesn't want to talk to me. He's mad at me. He's rolling his eyes. He's like, why can't you just get it together? You know, just being able to know that you have that kind of trust and that someone cares about you enough to say, like, just forget what you did. Just come, like, you know, let's talk it out.
Man, that is so powerful that you said that, because think about it, like when we think about God and punishment, right? A lot of times as kids, when we did something wrong, we saw it as we're being punished for the wrong that we did, versus what if there's the idea of corrective measures, this mindset that if I have done something wrong, I'm actually being trained on how to do it properly, and the methodology that is used to help me be trained to do it properly might look different. The spirit in which the correction comes will be different as well, right? And so I would even punish myself with the food. So it's like the food was something that was there to make me feel better, but then it's like, I know I shouldn't be doing this. Now I have to punish myself with the same thing. I'm punishing myself with the food. And sometimes we even do that as Christians, like, oh man, I'm punishing myself with the faith, because I think that's how God sees it. That's how he feels about it. He's castigating me for what I've done. And now I've got to, fast, and I've got to, memorize these scriptures and go really hard into these Bible studies. But the principle or the spirit in which I'm doing it is not from a healing place. It's from a damaged place. And so that's really important. There's so much we could talk about, but I really want to share this with you all. It's a really wonderful tool that I gained, and I want to just give a plug. It was at the Wildwood Lifestyle Center after leaving the behavioral health hospital that I gained this tool, and I want to share with you. I've renamed it the brain detox, because when you think about the idea that you have, let me just say, a bowel movement that needs to come out, if you don't get the bowel movement out, you're going to have gas, you're going to have pain, and your gas is going to affect other people. Like, what was that? Like all of that's going to happen. And it happens for your mental health, like when your brain needs to detox, what are you doing? You are short with people, you're angry, your patience, you may have less, you may check out, right? And do the social media thing from a place of, whatever's going on. And so this detox is really awesome. And it starts off with saying, today I feel, and you get to write down whatever you want. You don't have to make it make sense. You can feel good, you can feel bad, you can feel attractive and really ugly all at the same time. It doesn't matter. But the idea is that whatever toxicity is in there needs to come out. The idea of bringing it down to size. Scripture tells us to take every thought captive, right? Yeah. And this is important. You can't take something captive that you don't see. And this is why we're writing it down. We're acknowledging that it's there. So then we look at ANTs, our automatic negative thoughts, right? What are you thinking about that's actually negative? For instance, the idea, oh, I'll never lose weight. I'm always, no one likes me. I don't have any friends, whatever automatic thoughts are coming to your mind. And you may think to yourself, oh, this isn't helpful. I need to just claim a scripture. But this will actually help you recognize those patterns that you have. Because once again, if you don't know it's there, then you're doing it automatically and you don't realize it. And you're, in a sense, farting on people and you don't realize it because you don't realize there are toxic patterns in your mind. And that's what this is helping you to realize. So then after you do that, you have a conversation with Jesus. And with the conversation with Jesus, I remember doing this and I didn't feel like I believed in Jesus anymore. And so I just wrote down, like, this is how I'm feeling. I really feel forsaken. I feel like no one understands me, no one cares. And I really want this to change. But for those of us who aren't in that space and you're like, you're having a conversation with Jesus, you can literally say the same thing. God, I don't understand this. I really want this to change, whatever it is. But remember, a conversation, God talks back to us. Yeah. And so be present, allow God to speak to you through his word. He may bring a scripture to your mind, or later after your detox, somebody calls you and says, oh my goodness, I need to tell you this story. And it's just what you needed. You'll be surprised. And then lastly, always ending with praise. What are 5 things that you can be thankful for, even if it's very simple. And I found whenever I do the brain detox, I usually have more than 5 things that I can be thankful for. Also, scientifically, studies have shown us that when we write, it's a way of telling our brains that I'm doing something about what's bothering me. I'm getting to the root. And this is on a subconscious level. I'm writing, but subconsciously my brain is learning that, hey, I'm doing something about what's bothering me. Yeah. And this can even be done with art. For those of you who love to draw, color, paint, all of that, you can even do something like this with art. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Mia. This was incredible. So much information.
Okay.
There's this quote that I saw on Instagram, funnily enough. It said, comparison kills joy.
Ooh,
right?
That's good.
And then there's also a song by one of my favorite artists called Jonathan McReynolds.
Yes.
And it's called Comparison Kills.
Yes,
you know that
I love
song?
that song. It's awesome.
So one of the lyrics says, talking about God, he feels what you feel.
Yes.
So ask God to heal what comparison kills.
Yes, it's beautiful.
And that's so profound because it's just a reminder that there is no need for us to do this alone.
Yeah.
God is with us each and every step of the way. Yeah. There is no issue too big or too small. Right. If you're struggling with social media or you would like to address your social media consumption, that falls in the range of God being able to help you with. Yes. So I hope that you were blessed by this conversation that we had today and that you were able to take something away to apply in your life. We're here to support you. Yes. We're here. You can reach out to us at littlelightstudios.tv/contact-us, or you can leave a comment right there below. But if you'd like to contact Mia, how can people get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So you can definitely reach us by going to painunwasted.org. We'd love to hear from you. If you are watching this show and you are feeling suicidal, though, we need you to reach out to 988, okay? 988. You can text that number or you can also call that number. And it won't be a situation where they're taking you off to the hospital, okay? They know how to get you from a hot moment to a cool moment. So feel free to utilize that service. They can also point you in the direction of other services. And so, it's helpful.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of LED Live. If you're interested in more Little Light Studios content, please subscribe to this channel, and we'll see you guys next week, Friday at 12 on LED Live. Bye-bye. Every day is an opportunity to show kindness to the world. Every day is an opportunity to do something that lets someone know you're thinking of them. Every day is an opportunity to give without expecting anything in return. Every day is an opportunity to notice someone in need and to go out of your way to help them. Every day is an opportunity to do one small thing, to show someone you care, to make the world